Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, The Dutch Solar Market, Facts and Forecast. My name is Edwin Koot. I'm the CEO and founder of Solarplaza. And I welcome you very much to this webinar, which will take approximately 1 hour. And we have some special speakers for you this afternoon. First, let me make clear to you that this is an online webinar. We will record this webinar. We will make it available later on for those who have missed it. And it's kind of interactive, which means that if you have any specific question, you can send it to us through the chat box, which is on your dashboard. And please feel free to drop your questions. We will make a selection and use them to ask our speakers. The structure of the webinar is quite simple. I will give a brief introduction, then we'll have the speakers. One speaker at a time. After each presentation, we'll have 5 minutes Q&A with that speaker. And if we have time left over after the two presentations, we will do a more general Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions through the chat box. Good. Let's get started with the presentation. Let me see if I can get this moving. Yes, very briefly about Solarplaza. As most of you might know, Solarplaza is existing now for more than 10 years. We have organized more than 60 events, more than 20 countries, and we have a database of about 50,000 people around the world, trying to help you in your business to empower your solar business activities. Some of our events, our main business is to organize events around the world. Some of the events coming up, apart from the conference, the Solar Future in the Netherlands on the 27th of May, which is this is a pre-conference webinar for this event. We have the Solar Asset Management North America in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. Our major event, other events in Chile and India coming up, Solar Asset Management in Asia, and specific one to mention is around the buzzing topic of YieldCos, Solar YieldCos, Renewable Energy YieldCo Conference in London, 2nd of July. The Dutch market, that's what we're going to discuss right now. It's very interesting. Just a remark, today is an election day in the Netherlands. And if you don't know what to vote, there is some online tools to help you. And one of those tools has some questions you can answer. And one of the questions is regarding the wind energy application in the Netherlands. So are you in favor of more wind on land? This is just the only question about renewables in this tool, and it's very particular that these questions are asked about wind energy. Nobody asks any question, do you like coal plants in your backyard, or do you like solar on the roofs of your neighbors? But very specifically on wind there is. So, but in the Netherlands with solar, we don't have these problems, it looks like. And if you can see on the screen, we have more than a gigawatt installed of PV power now in the Netherlands. And the top 10 of projects is mentioned on our website, and you can download the top 35 through the website, through the link below on the screen. What is very interesting is the topic of today: what is the forecast for the market in the Netherlands? What is cumulatively installed right now? We will hope to have some answers from our first speaker in a few minutes. What's going to be installed next year or this year? What was installed last year, and how does that compare to 2013? What are the major market segments, and is the market going to change? And if I go briefly back towards the slide of the top 10 largest projects, it's interesting to see a trend that all of these projects, except for 2, were on roofs. And with respect to all the new announcements in the Dutch market, the top 10 of these projects are all on the ground, are free field projects. So there is some trend towards large-scale free field PV application in the Netherlands. On the other side, and if you look at the picture, you can see right here, this is actually in my neighborhood, it's a couple of 100 meters away from my house. I don't have the view on this house, but it seems like a new type of design, and it's questionable whether this is the way we go forward with solar PV application in the Netherlands. But maybe our second speaker can address this briefly as well. it will definitely be a topic at the conference on the 27th of May in Rotterdam. So, before we introduce the speakers, let me make some remarks about our speakers. These are very special guests, people we know for a long time and have been very much appreciated speakers at our previous solar PV conferences in the Netherlands. So first of all, we have Peter Segaar in Dutch. Peter, we say in English, market researcher, independent website blogger. I consider him the Dutch PV conscience. He's a walking market data warehouse. He knows all the details of all the projects in the Netherlands. He's a leading market researcher, although he was originally a biologist, and he's a proud owner of some solar panels since 2000, publishes critical analysis, facts and figures, and he knows all you would like to know about the Dutch market. Our second speaker, and I'm very proud that we have him today as well, is Professor Wim Zinke. I guess that most of you will already know him. I consider him the father of solar PV in the Netherlands. He is working for ECN, the research institute, since 1990, and has been his whole career since the 1980s has been dedicated to solar energy. Well, he has a lot of positions that are worth mentioning. Among them, like he's a professor at the University of Amsterdam, chairman of the European Photovoltaic Technology Platform. So, but let's say call him Mr. Solar in the Netherlands. Before we get started, let's go do a quick poll with you as audience. It's a very nice tool. We will put on screen a question for you. And if I'm correct, you can see the question right now. Let's see the question. What is your forecast for the newly installed PV capacity this year in the Netherlands? So make your choice. Take some time, a few seconds, and then we will show the results on screen. That could be a nice introduction for our speakers. So let's see whether we have an optimistic or pessimistic audience today. We have some guess about, well, we don't have any information about what it was last year. Yeah, let's show the results on screen. I'll ask my colleague to show the results on screen. Okay, so the results. It's interesting to see that the majority is, or almost half of the people say 400 to 600 megawatts. That's, I think it's already an increase compared to last year. And yeah, very small amount of people that really think the market is going to boost more than 800 megawatts, only 6%. But let's say between 400 and 200 and 600 megawatts is not too bad. Well, let's discuss that further during the first presentation. Okay, let's go to the first speaker. We welcome Peter Segaar, the market analyst, and my colleague will make his screen available for everyone to follow. And let's wait a minute. Yes. Okay, Peter, are you there? Are you ready?
Yes. Yes, I'm there. I'm ready.
Okay, please go ahead. The floor is yours, Peter.
Thank you very much, Edwin. Photovoltaic market in the Netherlands is a very exciting endeavor to have the statistics about it. I must start with the fact that we have no legal obligation to register in the Netherlands for photovoltaic installations, despite claims of the contrary, and that is the main reason why our statistics are so shaky. I'm trying hard to clear that up in last years. Our market is a typical net metering market. It's a residential market in which we can subtract production from our consumption of electricity. We do that for a price of 22 to 23 euro cents per kilowatt hour approximately, and that includes over 70% of taxation. This is one of the major concerns in the market, because if this will grow faster and faster as it does, there might be some problems with government who are afraid of taxation incomes. The next big thing is the SDE. The SDE is the Stimulation Regulation for Renewable Energy in the Netherlands. Has been implemented in April 2008. Has not been very successful in the first years. We have only had some over 100 megawatts of solar power from those earlier regulations, but there has been a change in the regulations. So we have now a 15 kilowatt peak minimum capacity before you can have approval. And there has been so much money being poured in the SDE regulation, because that should push the renewable market in the Netherlands, that we have had a chance for bigger solar projects to reach the last phases of the recent SDE regulations, and those are applying and allowed for 9.3 euro cents per kilowatt hour for 15 years long subsidies. Well, this will add to the serious further growth on top of the net metering market, the residential market, and sometimes even the SDE can and will is already being combined with, for example, crowdfunding projects, which are becoming popular in the Netherlands now. To get some numbers of ideas, the SDE 2013 has approval for 132 megawatts, and 2014 now already has for almost 400 megawatts, and there are still 1 billion euros of subsidies to be allowed. So there could be even more into that trajectory, and this will really boost further the market. It is not so that this will be realized everything in this year. They have 2 to 3 years time to realize the projects, but a substantial volume will be added this year. We have other market drivers such as the EIA, MIA and the FAMIL, which are taxation reduction more or less subsidies, or whatever you would like to call them, and the latter two are related to the trajectory of replacing asbestos for PV. These are all on top of the SDE and the net metering market, and that makes the boost even further. We have a very chaotic market. We have already 1,500 parties offering PV systems, including 50 wholesalers, and it is very hard for a private person to discern what is a good offer, and so this is really a big problem in the market now. What is good and what is relevant? But that is a very big oversupply side in the Netherlands. My latest insights now are that at the end of 2014, possibly over 270,000 installations are already there, which is over 1.1 gigawatt peak, and I would not be surprised if that could be 100 or 200 megawatts more. 70% has been residential in 2013. Residential sector is, of course, most of these installations. These are very small mostly. We have difficult roofs, small roofs. Average is 3 kilowatt peak in the residential sector, and many installations are much smaller. The system price, this is work done by Stichting Zonne-energie in our country, their report regrettably only of last year, was 1.6 to 2.4 watt peak euro per watt peak. That's including 21% VAT in the Netherlands, and you are not obliged to, but you can return that in 20% on the buying of the system under the Fuchs arrest of the European Union. Of course, the future of the Fuchs arrest is an enigma. There are some sounds that it should be abolished. But that is, of course, a big issue for the residential market. Apart from that, I have already at least 200 megawatt of bigger projects, which really is the new scene in the Netherlands in a big list, and those are in various planning stages. You could say that these are more or less reasonable, realistic or projects if they can be financed, and there's even much more volume included in rather vague plans. So there's a huge portfolio waiting. There's a big demand in the market which has to be financed. the next thing. This graph shows the accumulation of photovoltaic capacity in several statistical databases. The most important one is the CBS, the orange curve here. This ends in 2013 with 739 megawatts. We have not yet the numbers for 2013. We expect them end of May, I hope, before the Solar Future conference, so that we have a more clear picture. But you see that there's a huge change from very slow growth after 2011 to enormous growth. That's a typical hockey stick in the Netherlands. And we have then the second point I want to make here is that the SDE, which is the green curve here, is already 638 megawatts of solar power allowed, so it can be subsidized. Only you have to subtract this 190 already being realized, so that you will remain with 500 megawatts waiting to be realized. And I hope that a lot of that volume will be realized this year. The largest number we know of now is 971 megawatts in the Climate Monitor database, but I am sure that at least 1.1 gigawatt is already there, so there's a big black hole in statistics between these two numbers. That's our problem in the market. We're going to the market segmentation. The CBS has done for 2013 approximately, this is accumulation again, 739 in 2013, and you see here the big chunk of the residential system, 70% of that is residential, but those two blocks are the most interesting newcomers or growing markets. The agricultural sector, of course, we have thousands of farms, many of them milk farms with cows, with milking robots, very interesting combination with PV. And the service sector, which is growing fast, in particular if you're going to combine that with the SDE subsidies, and that is already happening now, these market segments will grow fast. And I want to mention the third important one, the smaller companies which were not on our in our vision for a long time. Now, because of the corporate social responsibility wishes they really have, this is really becoming ingrained in the minds of many people. They want to be part of the green revolution or evolution, whatever you take it. This segment is really starting to go off, and there are thousands of companies of this nature, of course. If you're looking to those three together, this block will grow much faster, and it will eat away the share of the residential sector as we know it now. Well, of course, we have also some big installations, but not comparable with many other countries, because we have expensive soil, we have our densely populated country with 60 million people. There are some small bigger projects in the free field, and this is the biggest one. It's 1.88 megawatt peak. It is an amorphous silicon project on top of a landfill in the eastern part of the country, and this will be the next big thing. It has been completely financed. It is 6 megawatts. It will be on the island of Ameland in the North Sea, and hopefully, well, they will start building it this year. Maybe it will be next year that it will be completed. But this is the biggest project which certainly will be realized. We have many more which are in the pipeline, but the financing of those projects, that is of course the big issue. Combined with SDE, it can be increased, but that is the point I want to make. The financing is a problem. Then we have this novelty. This is called the PCR project, the postcode roos. That if you're making a plan for a project in a zip code, the residents in that zip code and the adjacent ones can contribute, can buy panels in that project, and they will have a subtraction of the energy taxation for 9 euro cents per kilowatt hour, including VAT. It's very complex. There were very big problems with this kind of issue, and there have been only few realized, and this is one of the first ones in Langendijk. It's 2,000 panels have been installed, but it should become bigger, but we have not heard for some time of the extensions of that. Then we go to the market volume per year, the new added volumes. These are the CBS, the National Statistics Bureau numbers, 374 in 2013. I expect not much different volume in 2014. We hope to hear the first estimate in later in May this year, but there is a significant break then that we are going to a very big market, and we hear some numbers of your estimates. Mine is a little bit higher. I see potential for 650 to 850 in that range, and the organization Zonne, which is new, which is a commercial organization, has 800 megawatts on their vision line. If it's being realized, is a question of financing and the speed in which the big projects are being developed. But I think this range is feasible for this year. We must not forget that 2014 saw 1.5 gigawatts of Chinese imports into the Netherlands. Netherlands were the third country in the world to import Chinese modules, and of course not that volume has not been installed in the Netherlands, only a small part. Most of that has been forwarded to, for example, the biggest market, United Kingdom and European Union. But it is astonishing how much volume is important in the Netherlands. Then we're going to the prospects for the coming years. We're going to the National Energy Survey of Wim Sinke's ECN, which has been done for the first time last year, and they have two scenarios, the blue one, which is existing policy, and the red one, which is extra policy. We see in 2030 that the line comes into the vicinity of the 16 gigawatt physical line. KEMA of DNV-GL estimated that that solar power could be easily incorporated into the grid up to that level. If you want to have more solar power, you should extend and have all kinds of technical solutions to make more volume possible. When we look into other numbers, and we see the National Action Plan solar electricity, they had for a long time a goal for 2020 between 4 and 8 gigawatts. They are now already reaching for 6 gigawatts as attainable. I think it could be much more if there are no political problems on the front of taxation, etc. So up till 9 gigawatts could be possible, I think, in 2020 without technical problems. And Zonne, as I already mentioned, organization reaches for 10 gigawatts, which is of course a commercial organization. But even TK, this red star is TKY is the top sector of knowledge and innovation, reaches for 2030 20 gigawatts. You see that you need much more strong growth rates to reach that level, and then you cross that 16 gigawatt line much earlier. And I will finalize this talk with our present position in renewable energy is very poor in the backyard of the European Union. This is our goal, 14%. Sorry. 14%, and we have only 4.5% now, and that is only a very small segment, and we must do a lot of work. It's a huge task to reach the meager EU goal, and I hope that PV will be a part of the solution to that. I thank you for your attention. Edwin, you can...
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, thanks for an excellent presentation. Well done in 15 minutes, and also very useful information. So thank you very much for that. I don't know if people know that you can ask your questions, send them in through the chat box, and then we can ask them to Peter. So please keep sending them in towards us. Peter, just so for maybe some clarification for, you're still there, Peter?
Yes, I am there.
Yeah, yeah. So some clarification for maybe the foreign participants. So the SDE, the subsidy of for projects over 15 kilowatts, the 9.3 euro cents, is that on top of an electricity price you receive from the energy utility?
The 9.3 cents is the difference between the base price and the correction factor, which must be subtracted from the base price. So that is indeed the subsidy which you will receive, but the correction factor can be adjusted each year. That depends on the electricity price.
So do you know, for example, like a project in practice right now, what kind of price level they can use in their business models? What?
They need extra financing. The extra financing, of course, is partly the electricity which is in surplus on the location, which is sold to the grid. And there are now several energy companies, smaller ones, new ones, who offer higher prices than the big established energy companies do. So they can partly take profit from adding the subsidy and the sales price for the electricity. It depends very much on the location, what investments they will have to do extra to have an installation. And of course roofs are there. You do not have to have all kinds of safety issues like you have to do for free field installation.
Wait a second, yeah. With respect to the forecast for 2015, what do you personally believe? You showed on your slide a range for megawatts. Do you have an idea? And if you go back to the results of our poll, that almost half of the people that thought it would be between 400 and 600 megawatts. Are you more optimistic than that 600 megawatts, or?
Yes, I'm more optimistic, but it depends also on the finance of the possibility to have fast financing of the projects involved. There are many plans. They are already crystallized because they have a subsidy allowance. So there's a lot of work now going on to get all things financed. And I understand that if that financing will be time-consuming, that they will not be able to realize it this year. Yeah. But there will be an enormous volume in the pipeline, and it's already being done. Not so on a big level, but I expect that it could be rapid involvement of deployment later this year.
Okay. We have some questions coming in from the audience, Peter. You talked about the residential segment, which is the major part of the cumulatively installed power in the Netherlands. Sorry. What is your expectation for the coming years with respect to the residential segment? Do you have any idea about numbers, or will it be growing, or will all the new installments be in the SDEs plus segment, so to say?
The residential sector will grow as it has been done. It depends also on parties who are offering all kinds of lease constructions, but the Dutch market is a very difficult one for lease constructions. We are not very comfortable. I think the general public is not very comfortable with lease constructions. But there are, of course, other things going on, like the zero meter residential sector, the NOM, the NOM sector, which could expand rapidly if all barriers have been cleared for that sector to grow. And it depends on your definition. If you say if that's a big project or that is a residential project. I don't know.
Yeah, let's say if you take the 3 kilowatt average on a house, a roof, just a normal domestic application, do you think that segment will still grow, or did we reach some?
I think the size will grow. The power on the roof will grow because of efficiency of solar. Normally we have now 250 watt peak panels. They will sell 260, 270 watt peak, and that will, I think, increase the power per address.
And if you look at the total megawatts of residential systems in say let's in 2013 or 14, do you know a number for that? How many megawatts were the domestic application, the roof application for just average households?
No, I did not look into that. I will do that for the sort of future because the numbers are
for the conference.
Yes, certainly.
Okay. Let me see what other question. All the questions coming in. It's interesting that all the new projects announced. There are so many projects announced. For you to know, all the audience, is that we will very soon launch a top 10 or 20 of announced projects. So you have a more clear idea of what's coming up. Question here coming in about the commercial roofs. Does the Netherlands face the same problems as the UK, specifically Britain's elongated change of ownership with freeholders, leaseholders, agents, tenants? Well, that's quite a complicated question. But do you have any comments on what do you see on the commercial roofs? Do you see any problems arising?
I know of an existing project in which it was very difficult to get. There were several financing partners, and they had all their own ideas about what should be done so that their name was on top of the list in the project business. It's very hard to get these aligned, all these different interests aligned to get the project financed and realized finally. Those are rather long trajectories.
Yeah, and I guess that all projects in the commercial segment in the Netherlands will be related to SDE+, is it?
Not all, but I know, for example, that Hitachi did not have an SDE subsidy. So it is possible, but it is rare. Yes.
Yeah. There was another question coming in about, I don't know if you can answer that question, but let's give it a try. Do you see anything happening in the field of energy storage, and do you have any expectations for the application of energy storage, solar energy storage in the Netherlands?
Not for the coming years, because well, I read Photon, and in Photon they have calculated that for over 3 times, I think, and they still have not economic feasible business case with kilowatt-hour prices which are much higher than the Dutch prices. Of course, there's a lot of interest, and the development's going very fast, but I don't think that will be an issue in the coming years.
Yeah, that's the final question before we go over to our next speaker. About let's say the feed-in tariffs is coming in. Is a question whether there will be feed-in tariffs introduced in the near future. But maybe let's turn the question a little bit around. Do you expect the net metering scheme to be continued for the next coming years, in the next years?
In the next years, yes, but in 2017 it has already been announced that there will be evaluation of the system, and in 2020 we will see a big change. And the idea is that what is now happening with the so-called PCR project I already mentioned.
Yeah, can you briefly explain what the PCR stands for? Because some
Postcode Roos. Postcode Roos, yes, it's very interesting. And then, okay. So the basic assumptions done for that PCR should be extended to all PV systems in the residential sector. That is the idea. If it will work out that way, that is the second big question, of course.
Okay, but so there is quite of there will be some kind of a quietness around the regulation, the regulatory, the incentives in the Netherlands until 2017. At least.
And there will be also, if it's communicated in a wrong way, there will be unrest in the residential sector, because you will invest with the idea that you can net meter for say 20 years. But that is not anymore the case if in 2020 the net metering change will occur.
Well, that is of course then questionable whether that the changes will also apply for the existing projects.
Yeah, that's the big problem, and the big question then is what will they then do with the older projects? That's very big. That's not answered yet.
No. Well, let's keep the question running for the conference on the 27th in Rotterdam, and do some more discussion at that time. Thanks so much for your answers, and thanks very much for a very helpful presentation. We might come back to you later on, but let's now switch on first to a next question in our market audience poll. We will launch that and put it on your screen. Before we give the microphone to Wim Sinke, maybe you can answer the question, what will be the decisive driver for the future PV market growth in the Netherlands in the coming 5 years? You can start answering the question right now. Let's see if people believe that the grants and the net metering will be driving the market, or maybe the electricity price development, global warming measures, or maybe the marketing power of the existing PV companies. And people are still voting. Some interesting results pointing, yeah, I think most of the people have already answered the question. Yeah, let's put it on screen. Okay, so you can see on screen right now that I think most of the people, that's quite interesting. They believe that the continuation of the net metering scheme will be decisive for the future market growth in the Netherlands and the SDE grants. And but the continuation of the net metering scheme is mostly applicable for the residential application, while currently the bigger projects are the fastest growing segment. So it's interesting to see that well, the electricity price development is not regarded as one of the most important aspects, but we have to admit that the electricity price in the Netherlands is already quite high, and also 14% believes that the marketing power of the solar companies will have an influence on the market for the next few years. Interesting. Thank you for your cooperation. So that gives me the possibility to introduce our next speaker. I call him the father of PV in the Netherlands. I guess he's one of the people that has been in PV in the Netherlands for the longest period, although maybe he can tell us if there is somebody else in the Netherlands that have been working on PV longer than he has. Welcome, Wim Sinke. Can you hear me, Wim?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, Wim, are you the person that is working in solar PV in the Netherlands for the longest period?
No, I think that honor goes to Ronald van Zolingen,
okay.
who stepped out of the sector a few years ago, but I think he moved in, let's say, a few years before I did, and he stepped out just recently. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to catch up. Well,
yeah, I hope to catch up before I retire. Yes.
Okay. Well, the floor is yours, Wim. Please go ahead with your presentation. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I would like to take a different perspective than Peter. Of course, otherwise it makes no sense to have two presenters. Although I have been quiet so far, I was tempted to respond to some of the issues that were discussed, and I will try to touch upon them in my part of the presentation. Well, first of all, this is about the market for photovoltaics, but of course the overall aim that we have with photovoltaics, apart from creating new business, is to have impact on the energy system, or the electricity system to start with, and hopefully on the energy system in the longer term. This is also one of the main reasons why the government designs incentives, financial incentives and non-financial incentives in order to make this happen. And of course, from the perspective of the TKI, which was already mentioned, the Partnership for Innovation in Photovoltaics in the Netherlands, we have two targets. One is to support the large-scale rollout in order to have impact on the electricity system, to contribute to making it more sustainable. And the other part is to, well, to help building a new economic sector that gives us high quality jobs and turnover, because our country wants to earn a living in sustainable technology as much as possible. So these two aspects of photovoltaics I will try to keep in mind in discussing the market perspectives for the coming, well, up to 15 years. Okay, and I'm trying to get the next slide, but it doesn't work. Okay, here we are. Well, Peter already discussed this, but I would like to repeat it briefly and add a few comments to that. The drivers to have impact and to create businesses in the Netherlands are financial and non-financial. And so far, we should be honest, and well, the large fraction of the market is driven by purely financial motives, by the financial incentives designed by the government and by the energy sector in more general terms. Net metering was mentioned, which can be used for consumers and small businesses. And it was already discussed that it is expected that this instrument will be reshaped into something that is sustainable on the long term because, well, the present system in fact gives owners of PV systems a remuneration of about 23 cents per kilowatt hour, which is of course fine for a generous business case today, but once we start generating solar electricity for typically 6 or 8 cents in the foreseeable future, you could say that we no longer need an incentive of 23 cents. And the main reason to think about changing this instrument is because we want to create a stable market where the incentive does not change, well, not on a yearly basis, obviously, but also not on a too frequent basis. And we want the incentive to contribute to the innovations in the energy system that are needed for photovoltaics to play a big role in the somewhat longer term. And well, it's clear that net metering as we have it today creates no incentive, as an example, for local storage. And from the electricity sector, but also from people, let's say, with the motive to make PV a success, it is emphasized that it would be much better in the long term to have an incentive that would stimulate PV systems and owners to move into a direction that fits with 20 gigawatts or more in the energy system. So something needs to change there, and I think that the key perhaps boundary condition, not just a question, but boundary condition is that once people have stepped into this system, so they start net metering because they made an investment, for instance, this year, they should have absolute certainty that this can be continued for a period of time that allows them to earn back the system and to have a small profit. That means that a change by 2020 in which all the contracts that have been made based on net metering, if that would apply to all system owners, including the owners that have stepped in the period before 2020, would be unacceptable. And I think the sector should make a very strong plea that those people who were so brave and who have contributed to the early phases of development of photovoltaics to step in the coming years, that they will be rewarded by a business case that can be, let's say, continued the way they have designed it when they built the system. In other words, it would be quite natural and I think also acceptable for the sector if new owners or people buying a system after 2020 would be confronted with a new system that is fit with the price levels of that time, but not the people who have already bought a system perhaps in 2018. But this is, well, of course, this is not a decision. I think it should be the starting point for discussions between the sector and the government in order to make it a success on the longer term. SDE Plus has been mentioned as a very successful instrument where PV, to a certain extent, well, not directly competes, but eats from the same plate as wind energy and biomass does. Well, I will come back to the value of this market segment in one of the next slides. Well, it is really a Dutch invention, this postcode roos, or PCR, as Peter called it. Basically a tax incentive for joint ownership in postal code regions. It's a very, well, the intentions were very good, but so far the volume created by this instrument is not yet very large. So we need to see whether that will work out or whether it needs to be fine-tuned in order to become successful. And then there's non-financial incentives, at least to a large extent non-financial, like the energy performance labeling of buildings. Whether it's 0 on the meter or some other kind of labeling, in some, let's say, label level, the introduction of photovoltaics becomes a very attractive or perhaps even necessary step to take in order to qualify for, let's say, a low energy label. So in the future, I expect that this will add to the volume of the market in the Netherlands. Again, sorry, I can't get the next slide. I don't know why that is, but it doesn't switch.
Okay. Hello, Wim. Did you try there's a page down? Or if you put your cursor on the page and then page down.
Yeah. Okay, do it this way. It doesn't work the way it normally works. Well, if we look at the conditions to reach impact by photovoltaics, I think looking at the financial conditions, it's clear that stability but also intelligence of the incentives in order to make sure that an increasing number of people and businesses actually can make a business case with photovoltaics is crucial. And this is why also the redesign of the net metering scheme is so important, because you can easily, let's say, destroy the market growth that we have today if the wrong design or the wrong changes are implemented. So this we have learned in the previous decade, I would say, and I think everyone is aware of that. The challenge is that the government, in full discussion with people from the PV sector, starts discussing this well ahead of the dates that something needs to change. Then, of course, well, Peter mentioned that the very ambitious number of 16 to 20 gigawatts by 2020 is now adopted by several organizations. Even though the recent report by DNV-GL indicates that if the systems would be well spread over the country, there would not be major issues for grid integration. We are sure that the systems will not be well spread, and we are also sure that we need to solve a lot of local issues well before 2030. So that needs attention, and it needs to be addressed well before this starts to be the next limiting factor in market growth. So my message would be that even though we are sure that things can be solved in time, they need to be acknowledged and addressed also in time. And this does not correspond to waiting until we reach the limits of the current system. And then, of course, very important, and I would like to put a little bit more emphasis on that, for real impact, that is 20 gigawatts or more, public support is a prerequisite. It is unthinkable that photovoltaics becomes big if the people don't like it. And I think this is strongly underestimated because there is no strong public opposition yet. But we can only, let's say, work to prevent that in order to continue the market growth that we have seen over the past few years. And I think it would help, perhaps not, it's not a condition, but it's certainly very helpful, if the government would adopt quantitative policy targets, like we have targets for onshore wind and offshore wind. Whatever you think of those targets, it is very useful if we have a concrete number in terms of gigawatts to strive for, because that also shows the market and the private sector that it is not going away. It is part of the total picture for the transition to a sustainable energy system, part of the National Energy Agreement, and it should be taken as seriously as wind energy and biomass are today. And I'm convinced that the numbers that are in official documents so far strongly underestimate what can be done with photovoltaics if we really go for it, so to say. Well, if we now try to say what does impact mean. Sorry, this again I have a problem with the. Yeah, there we go. Let's look at 2020, the first step. For private people, private business people, perhaps already relatively long term, but in terms of the contribution to the energy system is the first step. Striving for 5% contribution to electricity consumption in the Netherlands would correspond to 6 gigawatts, which is the indicative target of the already mentioned TKI, and that would then grow to 9 gigawatts in 2023, which is the year or the horizon year for the national energy agreements that was adopted in 2013. This would correspond to 40 square kilometers of solar modules, so you cannot hide those modules, or 2 million roof equivalents, just to make it a little bit more visible. We're not going to install 2 million roofs with photovoltaics, but it's just to give an impression of what it actually means. Well, it was already mentioned by Edwin. Well, this picture I took in the World Heritage area of the Beemster last year, showing, I think, a private owner who wants to do the best for the energy system. But I think this is not enough. This is not good enough, and it will not work on the scale of this multi-gigawatt application. So we can and we need to do better. We're looking at 2030, 15% of electricity corresponding to roughly 20 gigawatts or 100 square kilometers of solar modules. And this means that it is not just a market segment that is attractive to be developed, but it is really essential that we start using large other areas beyond roofs on a large scale, meaning field systems, but also systems integrated into the infrastructure like railways, roads, dikes, and other areas. And I think the term that is used for that in the Netherlands is meervoudig ruimtegebruik, or multiple use of space. We are a small country, and we should be very careful not to use square kilometers which can be used for other purposes, or which should be used for other purposes, because it may put the public support at stake. And I think the challenge is that we can and should do better in terms of integration of photovoltaics than we do today. Something not mentioned yet, but we have lost a lot of manufacturing capacity in Europe and also in the Netherlands over the past few years. And in order to build a sector where we can also create new jobs, we should work on rebuilding manufacturing industry in this part of the world, not just importing everything from the Far East, but also trying to give added value to this rapidly growing market of sustainable energy technology. And I think that can be done if we design this in a proper way, and I will come back to that in the conference. I think it's crucial that we prevent the not in my backyard or not on my roof syndrome. And the fact that we did not hear a lot about it in the Netherlands yet does not mean that we can simply multiply what we do today in order to reach 20 gigawatts. I think that it is not necessary, and it will not be possible to reach that level. So I think solar energy should meet Dutch design. We know that the Dutch are famous for architecture, but also for design products. And I think we can join forces here in order to show that photovoltaics is a sustainable energy technology that can be integrated in a very attractive way, not just integrated in roofs, but integrated in many other objects, even using landscape architecture if we do a good job. And this leads to what I've called volume door verleiding, or seduce for volume. So make solar energy an offer that we do not want and cannot refuse. So looking at the conference in May, we will look at the possibilities offered for, let's say, facilitating this large-scale deployment by advanced PV technology, and I will show you what I mean by that. looking at new business opportunities that are created along the value chain for photovoltaics by focusing on this new approach towards large-scale rollout and creating an offer that cannot be refused, not by the private sector, not by the government, and not by the people in our country. And with that, I think I will stop my presentation and well, open the floor for discussion.
Okay, thanks very much, Wim, for a very clear presentation. Thanks for your comments and your forecasts. We will open the floor for questions from the audience. Yeah, there was a question coming in, like again on the storage, which seems to be a buzzing topic also in the Netherlands. So, what do you believe related to storage and the net metering? What will happen in 2017 or after 2017? You were addressing that in your presentation. The need for change of the net metering scheme.
I hope nothing changes in 2017. That's too early. I think in the long term, we will really need, or storage will really play an important role in the entire system. Whether that will be a battery under the doormat or storage at another level remains to be seen. But the only incentive for storage is that there is a difference in value between electricity supplied at different moments. And for net metering as we have it today, there is no difference in value. It makes no difference whether you supply electricity during the day or during the night, or whether you use a large fraction or not. So what I mean by an intelligent system is that we start thinking about what we need in the longer term in terms of business models, but also technology like storage, and then design the incentives in such a way that you stimulate this innovation in the market and in technology, so that we are not hindered by technical bottlenecks at a certain moment in time because we forgot to think about the integration that is needed for very large volumes.
Okay, so and if you put that in perspective, like the storage and the building integrated PV, let's say the solar design, then if I please correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're addressing that the design of solar is more important than storage then right now, or in the next few years.
Well, it's apples and pears.
Okay,
I would say that design is more urgent. While design in the broad sense of the word, of course, is more urgent than storage. But you need both in the longer term. And I would say that design is the beauty that you can see from the outside, and storage or intelligence in the system is the beauty that you can see on the inside.
Yeah, and if you look at this from the perspective that you addressed, like you know, we apply solar for both for two reasons. So it's for to reach our renewable energy targets. It's our common goal. The other side is the industry policy. We want to create business in the Netherlands. Where do you see the most opportunities for the Netherlands? Would that be in the design sector, building integrated products, or in the, like say, the more intelligent grid application, storage, smart grid, etc.?
Well, I think the design as such is more an enabler than a creator of a large number of jobs. I think that, I would say, I hope that we are able to come up with solutions for integration into buildings, but also in infrastructure and perhaps even into landscapes, where not everything will be imported from other countries, but where we can perhaps integrate the active heart, like a laminate, into the final product, or even manufacture also the active heart of the system, so the foils or the laminates, the cells and the modules here. We have a lot of private sector companies who are interested in doing that. Now we have to create the market demand for those products. As long as photovoltaics is just a commodity or one-size-fits-all solution, then there is no stimulus for creation of new products or building elements that produce electricity, etc. So it is also trying to create this market pool that will enable entrepreneurs to step into that and to create something that we don't have yet, and that fits very naturally in the well, the geographical environment where the systems are also used.
Yeah. Do you believe that we, like the government, should incentivize building integrated applications, like for instance you have in France, like so you have an extra incentive for nicely integrated PV panels in roofs and facades?
No, I personally I don't think so. I think the examples should do their job, and there is no fundamental reason why integrated systems should be much more expensive than, let's say, add-on systems. If the volume increases and we can achieve flexibility in solutions combined with standardization, then I think attractive systems could be offered for perhaps only a small premium in price, but the market pool, because people simply want it, could do the rest.
Yeah. Coming back to the design, you have a global experience in solar and also a very good experience in Europe. If you compare like the projects we have currently in the Netherlands compared to other countries, would you say that we are advanced in the BIPV projects?
No, I would say we were the pioneers in this respect very long time ago, and then somehow we lost track because there was no market volume at all, and now we are catching up again, and I think we have a good tradition in this field, so we can do that, but I would not suggest that we do a better job than other countries, than at least some other countries in Europe. You don't have to do a better job. You have to do a job in this respect, and thereby help the deployment of photovoltaics and also offer opportunities for new business.
Yeah, we can of course address and answer all the questions that are coming in, and then we hope to save some of for our conference on the 27th of May, where you will be speaking as well, and then more focused on the design issues. Some other question, and another question that came in is, would you say, what kind of measures should be taken to improve the grid integration of residential PV? Do you think any additional measures are required to give the market a further boost?
No, I don't think you can give the market a further boost by doing anything on grid integration. It's rather turning it around. If you want to continue rapid market growth for many years, then you should also work on grid integration. But if the incentives or if the innovations or the changes have to come from the system owners, then they should have an incentive, and that incentive is currently not there. And if the measures should be taken by the grid operators or by the government, then they should do that. But at present, there is not yet a strong incentive to move in any direction here. So this is why I make a plea to start thinking about it well ahead. And of course this is done in the TKI switch to smart grids. We have a large group of people working on system integration right now. There will be a special program for system integration that will be launched during the summer. So many things are prepared, but they should be accompanied by the proper incentives in the market in order to deploy them.
Yeah, and there is a kind of a risk involved in this development that, as you know, the continuation and sustainability of the policy from the government is key for development of the market. Yeah. And if we see some of the analysts we have in other conferences that predict that the PV system prices might go down for another 20 to 30% in the next few years, PV could be very, very attractive, and that means what is the acceptability from the government side of how much money system owners are allowed to make? Does the government, and you talk a lot with the government, do they have any like what is an acceptable payback time or financial benefit for customers that they can accept before changing the laws and changing the rules again. Because one thing is certain, PV will be more cheaper in the next few years. So that means that there could be an urgency from politicians to change the laws as they did in the past because they think it's too attractive.
That's right. I think there's no consensus on which level of profit is still acceptable, but that is the reason why I make a strong plea that the sector itself starts discussing this and does not wait until someone else says this is not acceptable, we will impose a change on you. Let's be proactive, think about our own future, and come up with a proposal along the lines that we think will work for the market on the one hand and for the government on the other hand. And then we have a win-win situation. So it's much better to be proactive here, to show that you are aware of issues that may arise at a certain point in time, and stay in control. Make the proposals for changes in the system that you think are feasible from the market perspective and from the government perspective, and then we do ourselves a big favor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for these very interesting words and answers of all the questions coming in. I'm sorry to all the people that keep sending us questions. We can't address all of them. I want to go over to Peter if he's still there. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Do you have some final comments from your side on the questions we have addressed and we have discussed with Wim as well?
Well, it will be very exciting to see the conflict between market growth and the uncomfortable feeling in government. These are already there, but they will increase, of course, with market growth. And the sector really must have an answer to that. I'm convinced of that. I agree with Wim on that point.
But make no mistake, the government wants photovoltaics to become big because we are part of the solution.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with that.
Is there consensus among all the political parties for this?
I would say, I cannot prove that, but I think there would be broad consensus. If we can do much more than people have expected so far, everyone will be happy.
Yeah, but and let's take this. Let's consider the forecasted growth figures that have been presented by you. You can, in a way, say they're modest. If something severe happens, and if there is a carbon tax credit that will be introduced, because maybe even in a European scale because of all the disasters happening, and then maybe due to the COP conference coming up in Paris, that there will be some really strong measures. Would the market be ready to accept or ready for a mega boost in solar application? Would the government in the Netherlands accept that suddenly it will grow like?
Well, I think if you looked at my slides properly, that I said 6+ gigawatts. So it's to me it's a lower limit.
Yeah.
We can do much more. At the same time, everything we do until 2020 is no more than paving the way for the real thing after that. So the most important thing that we do in the next years, apart from creating business, is to make a solid foundation for the real volume of photovoltaics that has to do the job in the energy transition. And that real volume will only be there if we make these first steps carefully and with a clear view on the longer-term targets.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's all still beginning. We are in the early stage.
Yeah.
At the early stage. Well, that gives enough food for thought for the coming weeks. And I thank you very much again, Wim Tinker. Thank you very much, Peter, for your presentation, your very clear market information. Thank you for the audience for attending this webinar, and I hope, of course, that we will meet you at our event on the 27th of May in Rotterdam, where both Peter and Wim will discuss the more secret figures they have not disclosed right now. That will be a nice driver for you to attend this conference, where we have more international speakers, visionary gurus from outside the country to stimulate and bring you more nice ideas for business growth. Thank you very much for attending, and we hope to hear you and see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.